I want to welcome Kelly Parker to Swell and have a conversation with her. Perhaps all of us can. That's the beautiful style of Swell. Because she did a really great TED Talk, and she's here on Swell, and I wanted to just ping her with this initial conversation and see where it goes. She did a talk on Swell about storytelling, and we know that it's a buzzword, and we know we've heard it a million times, but she has a really cool process she takes people through to help businesses really understand what it means to connect to audiences and help them have incredible connection to the message behind the story. And she uses a phrase that I want to sort of lead with here. It has to do with story listening, and it has to do with knowing what story to tell before you tell the story. It sounds so basic, but when you're a company and you're looking at your end user and you're saying what story is going to wrap around their hearts and change their ideas and ultimately change their behavior, what's that story going to be? And, there's a new movie out about Nike's decision to bring in Michael Jordan to create the product Air. I cannot wait to see it. But it reminds me of what Kelly's TED Talk was about. Knowing what that achievement was for that character, that what Michael Jordan embodies, and how that story is going to shape people's relationship to that shoe, and that makes the person want to buy that shoe. Kelly, can you talk about the desire that we all have, the aspiration we all have to be motivated to, get to that next level of ourselves, and how storytelling for brands does that so well? And I want to just put a cautionary sort of point here, which is that we all don't want to be manipulated, and yet we are manipulated, right? We don't like to know that brands are manipulating us through great storytelling, but it's the truth. They are. So can you kind of square that with us? Because I do believe it's beautiful to tell great stories, whether you're a person or a company, and you really help people tell that great story. So can you help us understand those decisions that are made and sort of the goodness in them that is okay? And I think you know where I'm going with this. I just want to drop into the humanity of storytelling, and if it sells sneakers, great, but there's something beautiful about that, the power of story in and of itself.
Hi, Deborah. Thank you for introducing us to Kelly. Kelly, welcome to Swell. I'm actually new at Swell myself. I find it a wonderful way to communicate. Actually, it's unique and it's authentic, and that's what I love about it. And I'm excited to hear about what you're going to offer us on Swell. So hope to meet you in the future. Okay, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Hi, Deborah. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be on my first Swellcast. I am new to this platform, but so excited. Like I was telling you, Deborah, I'm feeling so fancy and high tech over here. And hello to Glory Movement as well. I saw that you also commented. So it's so awesome to be able to chat with you guys. So, Deborah, you're bringing up so many things that I think about quite a lot as I think about story. And you mentioned the idea of story listening, and I feel like that's such a valuable place for us all to start when we think about story. Simply because it can't be about you as a storyteller and what you want to get across. It's got to be about who you're serving and truly showing up to serve them. And you mentioned the idea of, certainly none of us want to be manipulated. And I think that's one of the keys to not fall into that trap, is really to remember, I'm not telling a story just to get people to do a thing, but I'm telling a story so that I can serve people at the highest level through my product or my service or whatever it is that I bring to the table. The other thing that comes to mind for me is what stories are masterful at doing is creating belonging. And so I look at it as not so much as manipulating people, but showing them hey, if this resonates with you, you belong here. And not only that, if the story resonates with you, you don't have to say that. Like, people know, like, if a particular story or narrative resonates with them, with a person, they know that they belong and they sense that and they feel that. And so, you know what, if that causes them to patronize our product or service, that's just kind of like a byproduct of the fact that they have found community. They found their people. They found some sort of values that they resonate with. And so that's what I think is so cool about stories, is that it elevates the things that we bring to the marketplace to not just widgets, but to ways for people to find belonging and align with, you know, companies that hold the same values that they do. You mentioned before about, you know, the desire that we all have to get to the next level of ourselves. And I love the way that you put that in the framework that I use. I call it pursuit. We all have these things that we're after, right? So we have problems that we're looking to solve, and then we also have pursuits, all sorts of them. And so, you know, I think aligning with that, right? So understanding what are the actual pursuits of the people that I'm trying to serve, and you won't know that unless you're listening to them. And then speaking to that and then showing them, you know what, I have a way for you to get there. I have a way to help you get what you already were wanting. And so, like, bringing it full circle, I'm not manipulating you, but I'm here to serve and helping you find that thing that's going to help you get to the next level that you already said that you wanted to get to. So those are just a few of my thoughts, and I'm looking forward to discussing all these topics more. Hi, so there's one other thing that I wanted to mention in terms of really trying to identify what is the right type of story to tell. There are three types of stories that I think every brand should think about telling and definitely have on hand to tell at the appropriate time. So I wanted to offer those to you guys. The first I call a pillar story. And this really answers the question of what do we believe as a brand? And I call it a pillar because it upholds everything and it stands the test of time. This is a type of story that you can tell over and over again in different ways. When I think about a brand like Nike, I know that they believe, you know, that sport is for everyone, right? No excuses, just do it. And throughout the ages, throughout the decades, they have found ways to tell that same story over and over again in different ways. And so a pillar story answers the question, what do we believe? And it's one of those things that makes it easier for people that hold the same value sets as your brand to be attracted to and understand, okay, well, this is probably a place for me. They probably offer things that would appeal to me. The second type of story that I would think about is called a backstory. So just like it sounds, it really gives a picture of how you came to be. It's kind of like a behind the scenes look, you know, how we got here. Oftentimes brands leverage this through talking about what their founder went through to start the company or start the brand, and kind of give you that behind the scenes look, and perhaps throw in some, you know, drama or conflict in terms of some of the things that they had to overcome to get there, et cetera, et cetera. All those things help to humanize the brand and draw people in. And the last type that I think is really important is called the transformation story. And this one really helps to highlight the full impact of what your product or service does in the lives of people. So you might also know this type of story as a testimonial. But I call it transformation because you want to make sure to highlight the before and the after, right? So making it really clear, like, what life was like before, and then boom, you experienced my product or service and you had this kind of transformation, and then fully describing what does that after look like. So really breaking it down as before, during, and after to give that full highlight of the full transformation really makes that most impactful. So if you're looking for kind of a starting point in terms of how to tell a story as a brand to draw folks in, I would definitely keep those types of stories in mind. I guess I'm on a roll now. One other thought that came to mind, I'm just sitting here noodling on the idea of manipulation and how we want to make sure that we are not using stories for that purpose to manipulate people. You know, I think that we need to really make sure that we understand that stories are not just rhetoric. that if you are going to take the time to tell a story, make sure that you are also walking the talk, that it is not just words, just posts, just performative, but it really needs to be backed up by what is the lived experience that someone would have, within your brand or your company. Stories are about what is. It is not about what should be. In terms of, if you want to tell a story to really encapsulate, this is what our company, our brand is all about, it needs to be accurate. It needs to really encapsulate what is and not what, we hope to be or what should be or what have you, right? So if you want to talk about being an empathetic place, or you want to talk about, we really value diversity, I would really pause and let's ask ourselves, is that a real thing? Is that really happening today? Is that really the experience that folks have as they interact with us? And if not, look, it's 2023. It's time out for all the rhetoric and stuff, and people will quickly see through that stuff. So I think it's just a good reminder for us all to make sure that within our storytelling, we are being authentic and true, because that is what captures people's hearts, not the rhetoric.
Well, this all works together so nicely, doesn't it? Kelly, thanks for being here and for your very in-depth reply. I just posted the 3 stories here in the description, so if anybody heard the last swell, they can kind of refer: the pillar story, the backstory, and the transformation story. And I think they all blend well into the final message you had about authenticity. I think it's great to have structure because it requires a certain amount of rigor and a certain amount of thinking. Okay, what is our pillar story? What are the words that really evoke the origin story as well? Like, why did we start this thing, and what was it informed by? I think a lot of brands go through changes of leadership, changes of product direction, and that's when things get wobbly. And I just feel really clear, like you addressed the question I had, which is all these stories have to be so rooted in truth and in values so that people don't feel the sort of that sense of manipulation, that they feel like, oh my God, this story has to be told and I get to hear it. So I think we're covering that with what you're saying. Like you can help protect brands from coming off as inauthentic or manipulative or kind of fly by night. Oh, this is what we're doing this year. But people want to hear the true deep story. Like I think about Tom's, the one for one. They want people to be able to see. And if we get glasses, someone else gets glasses. Or if we get shoes, someone else gets shoes. And it's just beautiful. So I guess we can riff and continue on this thread by giving some, maybe some really tangible examples. Since you do this work, no matter how small the victory, I bet you have one to share with us where somebody was really struggling with messaging and with marketing and with buy-in from even their constituencies within their organization, but they found that story and it was able to be leveraged through all sorts of campaigns. Do you have an example of that, no matter how small or big, so that we can kind of celebrate that with you and get a sense of what that looks like and feels like?
Hey, Deborah. Wow, thank you so much for your patience. I've been going a minute over here, but listen to the question that you posed, and I definitely wanted to respond to what you were saying. So one of the things that you mentioned that stood out to me was how, as a company, we reach points where it's time to change direction or launch something new or something's getting ready to change. And to your point, that's the time that things can get off. And I think a lot of times it's because we're going so fast. Like, we got to meet the date. We got to do the thing. And the challenge, if we want to be really good storytellers, is to slow down and think. Like, okay, does this make sense? From an emotional level, how do I want to connect with people? So going beyond like, all right, we got to get the product on the shelf, XYZ date, et cetera, et cetera. When it comes to really connecting with people, it requires us to develop the discipline of taking a step back. So you mentioned an example where folks have really been able to find their story. I worked with a company, actually a relocation company. So they partner with companies who are relocating executives and want to offer them, the benefit of assisting them with their relocation package as they start within a new company. And we really wanted to dive in deep and kind of understand, well, what is our story? And what I like to say is stories are not created, they are discovered. Because they're right there. And often if we start telling each other the stories, it will uncover what the story is. Like, we don't need to create it out of nothing. We just need to kind of talk to one another about what is, and it will eventually come to the surface. And so working with their marketing team, one of the things that came up over and over again was this idea of empathy. Not just how they served the customer, and that was part of it, but how they related to one another at work. They begin to tell these stories about empathy and how they cared for one another, how they were there for one another. And mind you, this is, they just go to work every day and they make their widget and they do their thing, not really realizing there's so much more happening deeper on the surface that in turn affects how they serve the customer and how they bring their product to market. And so we were able to kind of craft stories around, we identify with, you're moving, you're probably overwhelmed, there's a lot going on for you, and we're able to offer this service with empathy. We're able to kind of put ourselves in your shoes, and that's why and how we serve the way that we do, and it affects every single thing that we do. So that's what's exciting for me, to be able to help people take that step back that you're not going to probably on a regular day because you got too much stuff to do to really uncover what is sitting right under your nose. And so, I would invite all of us to think about that. What are the things sitting right under our noses in terms of the way that we interact, the things that are important to us that we probably never just taken time to sit down and articulate, and tell each other those stories and give each other those examples and archive them so that we can benefit, from them in the future.
Hey, Kelly, you really are talking about patience, not in terms of me waiting for your response, but the process of mining the story, the process of asking the right questions in that conversational space so that you can uncover the true story and not manufacture it. I think that's really the difference between brands that reach into people's hearts and those that kind of gloss over because they don't feel authentic. And that mining process is very human, It's the opposite of AI. It's when it sort of gestates in you and you have exchanges with people and there's something that evolves. That's the iteration process. And it's really a very special group of people or people who work for a brand that are given the time to go through that process. But if the culture is a conversational culture, I think it's only steps away, because it's already imbued in sort of the way people exist inside that brand. It's so interesting. It's funny, I'm using brand interchangeably with company, which is probably the wrong thing to do. But I just love your command of this. It's so wonderful. I've been having a conversation with somebody, Sunil, who is also a story sort of broker, someone who helps companies find their stories. It's just a real zeitgeist here on Swell. So I'm so happy you're here, and thank you for this response. And I'll make sure I invite Sunil to your conversation as well. And let's just keep on talking, and thank you for being here.